had. She's been in the dental field for years, and her place of employment was bought out by some new doctors, and they changed things, and her position was no longer needed, so they let her go. And so she was without that income. I'm a full-time itinerant Christian musician, ministering in churches all over the country, and you know, that type of income does this, and it does that, and it does this, and it does that. We've learned to live by faith in that sense, and to trust God. So real fast, we started losing income, and we were hemorrhaging money, and we fell behind on our mortgage payment, and among other things. And slowly but surely, I started selling every piece of musical equipment that I had. In order to try and save not only Aubrey, but our family. And around that time, my wife was diagnosed with Crohn's. And we didn't have any insurance because she was without work. And so again, we were just hemorrhaging money, just left and right. And so we pretty much spent the whole year trying to recover from that deficit. And all the efforts that we tried with Aubrey were to no avail, and we lost Aubrey in May. And that was rugged, that was tough. But God blessed us with Moose 5 days later, Avishla, and then last October, God also blessed us with Shirley, a Shih Tzu. They're both quite the pair, and we certainly love and enjoy them immensely. They're both a handful, but we love them so much. Anyway, so I also have this music ministry, worship ministry to Native Americans called Native Nations Ablaze, and we go onto reservations and we do 24-hour nonstop worship events on tribal lands. And so I had an event in Pine Ridge in Oglala, and we were 16 hours into 24 hours of nonstop worship. Imagine for just a moment, nonstop worship for 24 hours on reservation land. Powerful, powerful thing. Where 12 teams cover 2-hour sets at a time. And it's just wonderful. And we were 60 hours into the event, and I was in the back of the church walking back and forth. My good friend Stuart, I mentioned him earlier, he plays bass. He and his wife had just had a baby girl, and Stuart's like a son to me too, so I'm kind of grandpa to Emma. And so I had Emma, and I was walking Emma around. She was 5 weeks old, and had her in my arms, walking in the back of the church while worship was happening. And this native 22-year-old young man tugged at my shirt as I walked by. And his name is Adam. And Adam pulled me down to him, and he said, "Ken, you've been coming to my church for 7 years." And he says, "I just want you to know I play guitar because of you." And that just meant the world to me to hear that. And then he continued on, and he said, "And I also serve on the worship team at my church, and it's because of the example you've been in my life, and I just wanted to thank you." And so I'm kind of just moved by that, and I'm starting to walk away, just blessed by what I just heard. And all of a sudden, God speaks to my heart and says, "He gets your guitar." And I was down to one guitar, that was an acoustic guitar. And of course, I don't argue with God when it comes to that stuff. I've learned years ago, you just don't argue with God. And I was not even bummed out by that. To me, it was like this wonderful, amazing thing that God had asked me to do, and I was so willing to do it. And so I called some of the pastors that were there at the event, and I called them together, and I said, "You know what? God just moved upon my heart to give Adam my guitar." What I had, the last instrument that I had was a custom-made Breedlove. This guitar was a very rare, it's a one-off instrument. There's no other guitar like it. And I was clinging to that guitar because it was all I had. God said, Adam gets it. And so I gathered the pastors together. We had just a quick moment where we pulled Adam into a room, and I said, listen, God told me to give you my guitar, and as a testament of his love for you, Adam. And it was a wonderful, wonderful thing to do. I found out in the aftermath that he'd been borrowing guitars from whomever he can borrow a guitar from to play in the worship team every Sunday. And now he had a wonderful custom-made Breedlove guitar to serve in the worship ministry in Pine Ridge. And for the first time since I was 19 years old, I went to bed that night and I asked the question, what am I going to do for a guitar? Because guitar playing is my life. And so a dear friend of mine from Sioux Falls, who was at the event, called me up Monday morning. He said, Ken, he says, you've given your whole life to minister to others. You've given everything you have to encourage others in their faith. And he says, it's time we give back to you. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, we're going to do a crowdfunding thing, and we're going to get you a guitar. And it's going to be the best guitar that we can get you. And I'm like, okay. And through a series of gifts, this wonderful group of people purchased for me a $6,200 Taylor guitar. And a custom-made one-off, another custom-made one-off guitar. And I was just blown away by that. So I want you to keep that in the back of your mind. Hang with me for a few moments. How late do you guys normally go? Just quickly. So what time do you usually just go? I'm not going to be long, but hang with me for just a few minutes. It's extremely important. So keep that in mind. That wonderful, amazing gift that came into my life. In October, my wife and I received a phone call from what we thought were lawyers. And basically they told us that we can help you get a home modification loan. Your name popped up because you are on a list. You've fallen so far behind on your mortgage because we were getting foreclosure notices and all kinds of crazy things. We can help you. So don't pay your mortgage anymore. We'll take care of that for you, and we'll get you a home we'll modify your loan. And for me, I thought, wow, this is maybe an answer to prayer. So we went for it. And 4 months into this whole deal, in January of 2015, as we began the new year, they were asking for more information. They kept asking for more. We were paying them X amount of dollars every month, and they kept asking for more. And I thought, this just does not seem right. Because they told me it would only take a month or two to get all this stuff rolling. So I finally went online and found out that basically what we fell for was a scam. And we paid them $4,000. And so to add insult to injury, we'd fallen way behind on the mortgage. Now we were even further behind on the mortgage. And foreclosure notices, and my heart just sank. And I don't do ministry for monetary gain. I do it because this is a call in my life. This is what God has told me to do. So when I say this next statement, please keep that in mind. But I threw together a spring tour real quick. That would happen in February. And I was calling it the Save My House Tour. Secretly calling it the Save My House Tour. And nobody knew. We had not told anybody what we were dealing with yet, except for a few financial folks. And 2 days before I left on that tour, my wife and I decided to file Chapter 7 bankruptcy and lose the house. And we just relegated ourselves to that, and all the advice that we were getting was, this is the only option you have. And so I'm standing at the door of our home that we are going to lose. Jill was going to the lawyer's office the next day to start the paperwork on the bankruptcy. And I had this $6,200 Taylor guitar. It's not this one, by the way. There's another story with this one here coming quickly. But I had that $6,200 Taylor in between us, and with tears running down our faces, and we were praying for the tour. And I looked down at this case, and I told Jill, I said, you know what? God is faithful, no matter what. God is faithful, and no matter what we face, no matter what uncertainties that lie ahead, and no matter what struggles we have before us, God is faithful. And I left for Sioux Falls, which I was scheduled to be at the South Dakota, or the regional Sioux Falls outpouring, whatever they call it. It's a gathering of Christians that get together every Sunday night. It's not a church or anything, it's just a gathering. And there were about 30 people there that night. And I remember I gave everything I had that night in ministering to this wonderful group of people that had come. And I just shared with my friend who booked the event what was going on in our lives, because everything was about to start the next day. And so he was in the back counting the offering that was taken that evening. And I was visiting with some folks, praying with some folks, and I kept looking up at my friend, and he had this huge grin on his face. And I kept thinking, what are you doing back there? You know. And finally, when everyone had left, he said that, Ken, you need to sit down. I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, the offering tonight was almost $8,000. And we needed $7,200 to get caught up on the house. That doesn't happen very much in my ministry, just saying real quick. That was huge. And the weight of all the world was lifted off my shoulders. And I knew that we were going to have the opportunity to keep our house. And the rest of that tour, I was so exhausted. I was no longer running on adrenaline, it seems. And I remember just being thoroughly exhausted, but God just blessed us. And it's since that time in February, it's been blessing after blessing after blessing. And it took us through the summer months to finally get caught up in everything. But we've found ourselves in a place where we are 100% caught up on everything. My credit is terrible, but that's neither here nor there. And so this guitar that I have in my hand today is called the Nancy Griffith model, and I had one like this for 17 years, and they're one of 100. And mine was damaged in a shipping accident, and was unable to use it anymore. And I came across one on the internet. This particular guitar, someone was selling it, and I thought, wow. I didn't know if I could get it at the time, because we were still playing catch up a little bit on some things, but I just sent the guy an email, and I said, tell me about your guitar, you know, and why are you selling it, you know, and those kinds of things. And we just started bantering back and forth, and he was selling it for $2,000. And the wonderful thing is that I found that he was a believer. He found that I was a believer from my website, and he said, listen, I'll knock it down to $1,300 if you want that guitar. And I'm like, I still can't quite do anything, but thank you. I'd love it, because that guitar is 100% me. And so anyway, a couple days had passed. He's out riding his bike, and he's having his prayer time. And he calls me up after his bike ride and his prayer time. He said, you know, Ken, I'm just going to send you the guitar. And I have to go on vacation, but I'll be back in a month. And as soon as I get back, I'm going to send that guitar to you. And that's just the way it's been this year. God has been so faithful and such a huge blessing in our lives. And everything that I sold has returned back to me. And everything that I lost has somehow come back And so, lifestyle worship. Worship is something that we don't do just because we feel good. Worship isn't something that we do because we're happy and everything seems to be working in our lives. Sometimes we need to worship God in the times in which we're struggling with uncertainty, when we're finding ourselves in a situation where things aren't going our way. Those are the most difficult times to acknowledge God's goodness. And of course, worship is not just singing songs. Having a lifestyle of worship means that no matter what, no matter where we are, no matter what situation we're dealing with, that we acknowledge God's goodness in our lives. And that's what Jill and I had come to in our lives. We chose to say that, God, you are faithful. Even when it looked like the most darkest moment in our lives, God, you are faithful. Psalm 139 talks about how God knows our sitting down and our rising up, and he's well acquainted with all our ways. For there is not a word on our tongue, but behold, he knows it altogether. Our frame was not hidden from him, as the psalmist continues on. Our frame was not hidden from him when we were made in secret and skillfully wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. And his eyes saw our substance being yet unformed, and in his book they all were written, the days fashioned for us, when they didn't even exist yet. The days fashioned for us. And the psalmist continues on to say that, how precious also are your thoughts to me, O God. How great is the sum of them. If I should count them, they would be more than the sand upon the earth. And when I awake, I am still with you. God's thoughts towards us outnumber the grains of sand upon the earth. We are never forsaken by God. And like it says in that particular passage, in his book they all were written the days fashioned for us. God knows everything about us. He knows the times in which we will find ourselves dealing with uncertainty. He knows when we will find ourselves dealing with challenge. And he knows when we will be walking in the goodness of his mercy, his grace. And through all that, he chooses to walk with us and to demonstrate his faithfulness in and through it all. And it's because of all that has happened in my life in 2014 and what has happened throughout this year, from the dark, dark places to the abundance of God. In and through that, I am choosing to sing to him that you are good. You are faithful. And through it all, from A to Z, God, I choose to honor you. There is a new expression of worship coming from my life and being today. And so, as you consider throughout the teachings that are coming recently that Travis has been sharing with you, the lifestyle of worship, just remember that worship sometimes happens even in times of uncertainty. But I can tell you without any doubt, that is some of the most strongest worship that comes from us as well. I hope and pray that I never ever take that for granted. And not that I ever have, but I don't want to take that for granted. To have the capability to play the guitar, to open my mouth and to sing of his goodness, and to speak forth who he is in my life and being. So I encourage you today, live a lifestyle of worship, no matter what you're facing, no matter what uncertainties that you're processing, that you're walking through. Worship him with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, as it says in Mark chapter 12, verse 30. That means every part of our being. And again, that's not when things are going our way and when things are going our way, if you will. God is faithful. God is faithful. Amen? Lord, I thank you for every heart and every life in this place. Lord, I ask that you would move within each of us and that you will declare your goodness and your love over all of us. Thank you once again for your faithfulness and for the testimony that you've placed within my life and being to share with those of your church. And I ask, Father God, that you would penetrate our hearts today with your goodness and your mercy and your grace. And that we would come to a full realization of who you are. Lord, I ask this in Jesus' name. And everyone said, amen. I do have CDs in the back. I don't have any of my worship recordings with me this particular visit. I ran out last week, but I do have 2 more CDs. They're instrumental guitar projects. Interestingly, let me add an addendum to what I shared with you already today. I signed a distribution deal with a company out of Belgium that distributes my music in Europe and Asia. And without any effort on my part, we've had over 100,000 album downloads overseas in Europe and in Asia. And if you go onto YouTube and you type my name in, Ken Verheecke, you'll find a plethora of videos created by Europeans and Asian people. I've been in 2 Chinese dramas, 2 Korean movies. I've been featured in car commercials in New Zealand and Italy. And this is just like quiet instrumental guitar music that, in fact, people fall asleep to these releases. And we have a disclaimer on the CD that says, do not operate heavy machinery or drive while listening to the CD because it can be detrimental to your health. But no, if you're looking for something that's peaceful and you know, maybe for your personal devotion time, or if you're dealing with insomnia, this might be a good CD. Although we've gotten letters from people that have said that it healed their marriage. Now, I have no idea how that happens. One person shared with me that their daughter was born into this world listening to these CDs. There was a lady in Casper, Wyoming, that sent me an email saying that her mother, when she passed away, the last few minutes of her mother's life, her mother said that she wanted this CD played while she was slipping from this life through the curtain into eternity. Just amazing testimonies. That's all I have with me today is instrumental guitar music. Even though I didn't play any today, they're there, and they're there to enhance and to be a blessing. Enhance your personal devotion time, rest, but also may it be a blessing to you in other areas as well. However God uses those recordings, may it be so. So thank you for today. Pastor Travis, wherever you are, thank you. I don't know if you're going to see this GoPro or not. And look forward to next time, whatever that may be. And maybe I can bring some friends with me next time that play music with me. And we'll have another celebration of God's goodness. And I'll have another testimony to share at that time. So God bless each and every one of you. Do I need to turn it over back to you? This time? Okay. Grace and peace.